everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I am excited today to have on with me Lucy McBath, who is running for Congress in the Georgia 6th District. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for joining me. So I know a lot about who you are. I've been following you for a while, but maybe some of our listeners don't know. So can you tell me a little bit about your background and the work you've done in gun violence prevention, and then why you've decided to run for Congress now?
Most certainly. I come from a civil rights background. My parents were civil rights leaders and part of the struggle in the civil rights movement. My father was Illinois branch president of the NAACP for over 20 years. Also served on its executive board, and so that's in my DNA. I grew up helping my parents as they were around the nation, in particular Illinois, fighting for the civil and human rights of people of color. I was always kind of politically aware and astute of what was going on in the nation, but I was raising my son Jordan Russell Davis. As a single mom, of course I would go to the polls and I would vote at the midterm elections and the general elections, but I was not ever really critically engaged until my son Jordan Davis was shot and killed in the National Law Music case in November 23rd, 2012. And at that point, I think that was the catalyst for me to begin really challenging the existing gun culture. I questioned how these kinds of tragedies could happen to not only my son, but, these tragedies are happening all over the nation. And why were our legislators not willing to stand up and defend the people in their communities? Why were our peacemakers, I call them, our clergy across the nation, why were they not speaking out? Because I know that they had in their own congregations people that have been adversely affected by gun violence. So in doing that work, actually became the national spokesperson for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, and also the faith and outreach leader for Everytown for gun safety and Moms Demand Action, doing the work of trying to bring some common sense solutions into our existing gun laws, working with volunteers with Moms Demand Action around the nation, helping to build this grassroots movement for safer gun laws and safer communities. So that's how I really began working in gun violence prevention. Just was absolutely disheartened and my heart was broken when, I began to just continue to see people around the nation being gunned down unnecessarily. I decided that, after we lost the election in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, I am one of her mothers of the movement and traveled all over the country, really trying to help move the needle in gun violence prevention. But when we lost that election, I just started asking questions as to how do we expand the movement? How do we continue to do the work when we don't have an administration that is going to be favorable towards, sensible gun laws and sensible gun reform? And so I decided the best way for me to really kind of make a difference for my neighbors, the people that I live next door to every day in Georgia, is to expand the work in gun violence prevention and to run for office. I was running for the district level seat, District 37, which is my district in Marietta, Georgia. But after Parkland, I was just completely horrified by the fact that our children were being gunned down in schools, that they're unable to spend their time being educated and concentrating on exams and their extracurricular activities without the fear of being gunned down. And that's the point that pushed me past inertia to move for the congressional seat. What I began to recognize is that our children were doing the work that our legislators were not doing, that our children were doing the work and preserving their futures that the adults were reluctant to do, and that I vowed that I would do everything in my power to help them. My son didn't get a chance to go to college. My son hasn't gotten a chance to grow up, and I want to do everything in my power to make sure that my voice in Washington will help move the needle on gun violence prevention, and that we needed people in Washington that would have an open door policy, always listening to the citizens that they represent, always making sure that they're doing the best to meet their needs. But they deserve, to have an inclusive vision for the communities that they live in, and that I just really believe and know that I am the best skilled for doing that work because I've been doing organizing and movement building. I've been talking with people around the nation, and I've been understanding what they're concerned and worried about and what their fears are, even outside of gun violence. And those are the same fears and concerns that my neighbors in Georgia have. So that's the reason why I decided to run for the 6th Congressional District.
I have two young sons myself, and I just can't imagine what that would be like to go through. And I'm so humbled, really, that you could take that experience and use it to drive your activism. You know, I think for a lot of people, it could just sort of break them. Can you talk a little bit about sort of where your strength and your drive comes from in doing this work and in keeping going?
Oh, most definitely. I'm a woman of deep faith. And so anyone that knows me knows that I lean on God, just unequivocally. I lean on God. That is where my strength comes from every single day. And also, too, my strength comes from the people that are out there doing this work, people that are out there trying to save lives. I look at them and I say, wow, they're just like me. We're out here fighting to preserve, democracy. We're fighting to preserve human life. And, there are people that never have a voice. There are victims that will never get to tell their stories. There are people that will never have the resources to be able to really, create the change and stimulate the change that we need to change this culture, this, extremist gun culture. And so meeting with volunteers and mothers and fathers and parents and loved ones across the country who have lost someone, I know what that feels like. I know how devastating that is, not only to the loved ones, the survivors of these crimes, but it's a devastating loss to our communities. And whatever affects our communities is devastating to the nation at large. So I do not take lightly the mantle that I've been given, but I take it on because I know that, yes, I could have tucked my tail between my legs and gone off in my own pain, but that would have been like a second death. I've already lost Jordan, and I refuse to lay down and die to this extremist culture. We have a responsibility as human beings to care about one another outside of ourselves. And that is what I was teaching and training Jordan to do and be. So I have to live that legacy, and that legacy is extended to everyone outside of Jordan. And that's why I do this work.
So you mentioned that as you've been traveling around the country, you've been hearing the other issues that are really affecting people, things beyond maybe connected to gun violence, but other than gun violence. Can you talk about what some of those other issues are that are driving your campaign?
Oh, most definitely. I'm very, very concerned, not only about gun violence, but I'm very, very concerned about education. I definitely think that our legislators should be spending more time and resources making sure that our children have the education that they need. In fact, here in Georgia, that we're paying federal tax dollars into an education system, and if we still have children that don't have the resources that they need, we still have teachers that might be dealing with wages that they might not be able to live comfortably on. And also, too, I can remember specifically when Jordan was in high school here in my district. He came home one day and he didn't have a math book. And I said, Jordan, where's your math book? He said, Mom, we don't have math books. I said, Jordan, you're teaching me. And he said, no, Mom, we don't have math books. So I know when we're paying federal tax dollars, into, our children's education, we should be able to see where those dollars are going. Our children have to be able to compete globally now in a global society. We need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to give them the safety net and the tools, everything to be able to compete and to be successful. I know that, the Trump administration has been trying to, defund the Department of Education. I think that's absolutely a tragedy. And I intend to do everything that I can to make sure that our children have the resources that they deserve. Very, very concerned about health care. I'm a big proponent of health care. My parents were health care providers I'm a 2-time breast cancer survivor, so I understand and know how important it is that my citizens in my state have access to good health care. And I want to make sure that the federal tax dollars that we're paying into the healthcare system, those federal tax dollars are going outside of my state here. We have a lot of people that don't even have access to Medicaid. I want to be able to expand Medicaid so that everyone has good health care, because when they aren't able to have that good health care, a lot of those expenditures are passed on to the middle income families. And it's just not right. I want to make sure that we're able to, in the Medicare system too, be able to cover as many people as we possibly can. I also want to make sure that, we're able to lower the eligibility age for Medicare. I think that's extremely important. These are just some of the things that I'm very concerned about. I'm very concerned about our infrastructure, making sure that, we're able to have good, strong roads and a viable transportation system that allows people in my district to be able to go to other population centers around the Atlanta metropolitan area. So there's just a number of things I'm really concerned about. I'm concerned about immigration. I just want to make sure that, that people are represented fairly. As a woman, as a woman and as a minority, I understand what it means to be discriminated against. I don't believe that any person in this country should be discriminated against in terms of their ethnicity or their religion. And so I also want to make sure that people have the ability to have a clean pathway to citizenship. And I could go on and on, but these are just some of the things that are very, very important to not only to me, but to the people that live in my district.
And so the Georgia 6th District, this is around the Atlanta area?
Yes, ma'am. It is the Atlanta metropolitan area. It's comprised of North DeKalb, North Fulton, and East Cobb.
Okay. And so this was a district that was represented by Tom Price. And then when he left to join the administration, the Trump administration, there was a special election there. And so even though Tom Price had been winning by fairly healthy margins in the district, the special election was actually very close between Karen Handel and John Ossoff. So do you think that this is a district that is going to be able to flip to Democratic representation?
Absolutely. In our special elections in the fall in November, we actually did flip 5 districts, and most of those seats went to women. So we see a tremendous trend here in the 6th district. A lot of that has to do with the wonderful platform and foundation that John Ossoff laid for people like me and all the candidates that are actually running now. There has been a tremendous amount of mobilizing, regional mobilizing. We have a lot of political groups that are popping up now, groups that are really pushing to flip these seats. There's a lot of mobilizing happening. And also, too, I'm in a district now that even though it has been a slight Republican lean in the past, we're slowly but surely beginning to see the pendulum swing to either more moderate Republicans, but also a district that's moving more towards the Democratic Party. So in my district alone, my pathway to victory, I know, will be I have a district that is comprised of 60% college-educated voting women and 24% minorities. And so I happen to fit both of those demographics, and I don't take that for granted by any means. But we do know that, in this last race, Karen Handel did not win by a very large margin against John Ossoff in that special election. And so we also know, too, that, the Atlanta metropolitan area basically is blue. And, of course, there are more people that are migrating here every day. And we know that the number one polling issue in the fall is going to be guns. So in my district, I'm very concerned about gun violence. Among the other issues, education and healthcare. So we know that we have a really, really good chance to make some changes in the district, to make the district far more inclusive. It is a very diverse district. And so the people that are elected have to represent those demographics.
What sort of reception have you been getting as you've been going around the district? I know you've been doing some town halls and house parties and talking to people. What sorts of things have you